Normal romance shows worry about a bad ex or a disapproving family. Dark fantasy C-dramas worry about whether loving someone will literally rip your soul apart or trap you in a time loop. The supernatural romances on this list do not give you a safe, fluffy love story. They give you poisoned hearts, forced memory wipes, and ancient gods who use human lives like chess pieces. Today, we are counting down the top 15 dark fantasy and supernatural romance C-dramas you must watch. These are the shows that made falling in love feel like a life-or-death survival mission. Let us get into it.
初见，让所有的秘密跟你一起消失吧。
Love under the full moon turns a normal fall off a cliff into a 10-year time jump and a physical leash. Lei Chuxia, Ju Jingyi, tries to escape her fiancé under a supermoon and wakes up in 2021 with a completely wiped mind. She literally drops onto Xu Xiaodong, Zheng Yecheng, a quiet game designer, and the cosmic energy fuses them together. Chuxia cannot walk more than a few steps away from Xiaodong without getting physically yanked back like a magnet. Forced proximity usually makes for a cute romance, but the dark side here is the lost time. Chuxia becomes a digital ghost. She has no records, her friends have moved on, and her parents aged a decade overnight. The real monster in this story is her perfect fiancé from 2011 who let her fall off that cliff just to protect his corporate secrets.
一切美好的东西永远不分开。
Moonshine and Valentine builds a 900-year wait, only to trip right before the finish line. The final episodes fell apart so badly that the actual screenwriter had to go online and publicly apologize to the fans. It is incredibly jarring to watch a guy spend centuries trying to save his girlfriend, only for the production to completely fall apart in the last hour. The dark fantasy at the center of this mess is about a gruesome organ transplant. Helen Jingting, Johnny Huang, is a fox alien who was cured of childhood blindness because his dad cut out his wife's liver. Because of this gross history, his wife's soul is cursed to die at age 25 in every single life. Jingting is just fighting a brutal biological clock that keeps resetting. Guan Pipi, Victoria Song, is the modern version of that wife, and she has no idea who he is. Pippi is just a normal intern with a normal boyfriend who thinks this alien guy is a total stalker. Falling in love with someone who has waited 9 centuries sounds romantic on paper, but in practice, you are just a normal girl being chased by a guy who knows your soul better than you do. The blossoming love builds its tragedy around a single, massive sacrifice tied to a divine tree from a past life. In their current life, Xie Shuichen, Vin Zhang, and Mu Xuanling, Sun Zhenni, are trapped on opposite sides of a strict war between immortals and demons. Shui Chen is the leader of the Immortal Alliance, but he maintains his perfect, cold image by practicing a cultivation method that actively starves him of his own emotions. Mu Xuanling is a loud, clever demon girl who constantly challenges his rigid moral code. The dark fantasy here comes from the suffocating rules of their society. His fading memories of their past life are fighting a losing battle against his job description, which commands him to execute demons like her on sight. The horror comes from the heavy, physical weight of a righteous path that demands you kill the one person who makes you feel human. Back from the Brink stands out because it takes an epic Dragon King and drops him straight into the mud. Tian Yao, Neo Hao, starts as a pile of chopped up body parts, betrayed on his wedding day by a woman who literally peeled off his scales to make a gift for her actual boyfriend. The dark fantasy here is incredibly brutal, but the romance handles it with a surprising sense of humor. 20 years later, Yao's spirit latches onto Yan Hui, Zhou Ye, a kicked-out student who only cares about making enough money to buy lunch. Hui is kept alive by Yao's heart-protecting scale, meaning she is walking around with a piece of his chest inside her broken heart. They don't save the world from floating temples. They hunt down Yao's missing limbs in dirty underground markets and cheap taverns. Hui even starts using shadow power, a dark magic that feeds on her trauma and negative emotions. The show proves that demonic energy is just the natural anger you feel after getting thrown away by the people who were supposed to protect you. Rattan drops a 1930s woman wearing a beautiful silk cheongsam right into the middle of modern traffic. Si Teng, Jingtian, is an ancient plant alien brought back to life by the blood of a normal architect named Qin Fang, Zhang Binbin. The dark fantasy here is a literal life drain. Because Teng used her breath to save him, Qin Fang's body will start rotting away if he stays too far from her. It turns a standard romance into a physical hostage situation where walking away from the girl you like makes your organs shut down. Teng treats him like a servant, but the real horror is buried in her origins. A hunter named Qiu Shan tortured her for years, using a meteorite to force a wild plant into a human shape, just to turn her into a weapon against her own kind. To make things messier, Teng's soul is split in two. Her other half, Bai Ying, is a ruthless killer who committed horrific acts to survive. Loving a woman who has a murderous alter ego and treats you like a servant turns this into a very creepy, very stylish modern horror story. Ancient love poetry starts with a connection that looks completely unbalanced on the surface. Shanggu, Zhou Dongyu, is a playful, surprisingly weak goddess, while Bai Jue, Chu Kai, is the most powerful, stone-cold god in the universe, acting as her teacher. But underneath that quiet exterior is a loneliness so heavy it stretches across tens of thousands of years. The dark fantasy in this romance comes from the sheer exhaustion of living forever. When a massive disaster threatens to wipe out existence, Shanggu steps up to sacrifice herself. A normal tragedy would end right there, but Bai Jue refuses to accept it. He spends 60,000 years designing a way to swap places with her in the dark, to make sure Shanggu doesn't throw her life away trying to save him when his time comes. Bai Jue's grand plan is to make her absolutely despise him. He pretends to be someone else, acts cruel, and plans to marry someone else, all while secretly walking toward his own death. Loving someone in a world of immortal gods means carrying a secret so heavy you have to break their heart on purpose just to keep them breathing. Parallel World treats an entire desert like a massive, hidden tomb. 18 people walk into the sand at Yumen Pass and completely vanish, leaving Changdong, Bai Yu, as the only survivor. He teams up with Yeliu Shi, Ni, an amnesiac who sells street food but fights like a trained weapon. The dark fantasy here lives in the dunes, packed with living shadow puppets and sand zombies that guard a secret world of exiled sorcerers. The romance has zero fairy tale dust. It is dirty and exhausting, built on two people keeping each other breathing in a place that actively wants them dead. Falling for someone in a supernatural purgatory turns the love story into the only solid ground you can stand on when the rest of the world is literally made of monsters.
你若是不甘心被轻贱、被欺辱，那就努力地活下去。
Moonlight Mystique dresses its characters in bright, heavy silks, inspired by ancient cave paintings that slowly rot into dark, jagged demon armor as the show goes on. The beautiful colors are basically a warning sign. The dark side of this world hides behind a grim rule about how magic actually works. To wake up a divine rock stuck in her chest, Bai Shuo, Bai Lu, has to physically suffer through 5 extreme human emotions: kindness, killing, love, hate, and greed. It is not a fun quest. Fan Yue, Ao Rui Peng, carries the title of Demon King, but he is really just a cursed, weakened guy, relying on Shuo to keep them alive. The true horror hits when you look at her adopted brother. His grief eats away at his sanity so badly that he completely loses his mind and turns into a crazed monster. Tying their romance to a mandatory checklist of trauma turns a fantasy adventure into a brutal endurance test. The Blue Whisper gives you a villain in Princess Shunda that makes your blood boil. She is just a narcissistic bully who uses a lethal poison to keep an entire valley of demon hunters as her personal slaves. Ji Yunhei, Dilraba Dilmurat, is the top jailer in this beautiful prison, tasked with breaking the will of a pure merman prince named Changyi Ren Jialan. The dark fantasy here is about the sickening process of domesticating a wild creature just so a spoiled princess can keep him as a pet. Yunhei falls for his innocence, but she can't just unlock his cage. The only way to save him from a lifetime of slavery is to make sure he never wants to come back. She stabs him and pushes him off a cliff, wearing the mask of a monster so he will run away and stay hidden. To survive this world, Yunhei eventually breaks her own body by turning into a half-fox demon. The power reversal is brutal. Changyi comes back as a cold demon king, and Yunhei is now the one locked in a cage with her life force draining away. Turning a love story into a literal hostage situation where you have to destroy someone's trust to keep them alive makes this a romance built entirely on the trauma of captivity. Love Beyond the Grave splits its screen between freezing, bloody ice battlefields, a quiet, cold ghost realm, and the bright, loud, mortal world full of street food and fireworks. Hisimu rules that dark spirit world, but she has been completely numb for 400 years. She lost all 5 of her senses. Duan Shu, Chen Feiyu, is a mortal general who steps into her world to form a magical contract. They share senses so Simu can finally taste food and feel warmth. But the dark catch is that they also share physical pain. The real horror isn't demons. It is the cage of immortality. Simu has spent centuries watching people die, and tying her soul to a mortal soldier who will age and rot in a few decades is a guaranteed tragedy. Giving a 400-year-old ghost the ability to feel again just to watch her mortal lover die turns this into a beautifully painful setup. This drama builds its entire world on one terrifying rule. Falling in love is a crime punishable by death. The gods in this universe are forced to act like emotionless machines to keep the peace. Yan Dan, Yang Zi, breaks this law in the worst way possible by ripping out half of her own lotus heart to save a poisoned god named Ying Yuan, Cheng Yi. Having your heart literally carved out is brutal, but the real horror comes from the system. Her own twin sister takes the credit, and Ying Yuan is bound by heavenly law to treat Yan Dan like garbage. It is the supernatural equivalent of saving someone's life in a burning building, only for them to press charges against you because you weren't allowed inside. The pain drives Yan Dan to jump into the night-forgetting river. Normal souls wash away their memories in a single day. Yan Dan's grief is so heavy that she gets stuck in that water for 800 years, letting it slowly eat away at her spirit until Ying Yuan has to forcefully erase her mind just to keep her from dissolving into nothing. To make things messier, Cheng Yi plays 3 different versions of this tragedy across timelines. The repressed god who hurt her, a loud mortal who actually gets to love her, and a villain stuck in a time loop. Turning a basic emotion into an executable offense makes this a story where the only way to be together is to completely destroy yourselves. Lost You Forever centers its story on the terrifying reality of hiding in plain sight. Xiao Yao, Yangzi, uses the Fuxi mirror to physically break and reshape her own bones, wiping away her royal identity to survive centuries of torture and abandonment. Changing your face to escape your enemies sounds great until you do it so many times that you completely forget what you actually look like. She becomes an immortal with shattered spiritual veins, forced to survive in the slums as a deadly poison master and doctor who uses people's underestimation of her as a weapon. The romance gets really dark because she deliberately chose to be a nobody. Kang Xuan, Zhang Wanyi, spends his life searching for the powerful princess he lost, failing to realize the dirty street doctor standing right in front of him is the answer. And Xiang Liu, Tan Jianxi, is the only one who refuses to let her play weak, forcing her to learn archery so she can finally defend herself. Stripping away your own face just to feel safe turns this into a romance where being loved means accepting that the person you want most doesn't even know who they are looking at. The next drama on the list is Love and Redemption, and this one takes the romantic idea of destiny and turns it into a terrifying, exhausting loop. Chu Xuanji, Crystal Yuan, and Si Feng, Cheng Yi don't just get one chance at happiness. They are forced to live and die together 9 times, and every single time, Xuanji accidentally kills him. The cruelty starts with Xuanji's body. She is born completely numb, unable to taste, see color, or feel love. It makes her accidentally cruel, breaking Sifeng's heart over and over without her even realizing it. Sifeng tries to handle this pain by wearing a magical mask that has a brutal failsafe. If his heart breaks 3 times while wearing it, the mask grows literal spikes into his chest. Falling in love turns into a physical countdown to his own execution, making his own feelings his deadliest enemy. The absolute darkest part of this world is saved for the twist about Xuanji's identity. The heavenly realm took a demon king, carved out his soul, and forced him into the body of a female goddess to slaughter his own kind. It is a level of body horror that makes you question everything about the good guys. Sifeng spends their 10th life taking every hit intended for her and pretending to be the ultimate villain just to keep the world's crosshairs off his broken girl. Turning a soulmate connection into a 10-life execution sentence makes this the ultimate survival story disguised as a romance. This one strips a tyrant of his greatest weapon by making him catch feelings. Dongfang Qingchang, Dylan Wang, spent 30,000 years freezing his emotions to master hellfire. He is the scariest being in the universe until a clumsy orchid fairy named Xiaolanhua, Esther Yu, accidentally triggers a curse that links their souls. Qingchang doesn't just have to protect her, he has to physically feel everything she feels. If she gets hurt, he bleeds. The dark fantasy here is a trap inside his own chest. As Lanhua makes his frozen heart start to beat again, his hellfire gets weaker, leaving him completely open to his enemies. The good immortals are actually hypocrites who oppress his demon clan, and they fully expect Lanhua to sacrifice herself as a goddess to fix their mess. Qingchang is the only guy arrogant enough to tell the universe he will burn it down if it tries to take his girl. Till the End of the Moon introduces Tantai Jin, Luo Yunxi, as an empty shell. He is born without the ability to feel emotion, spending his days as a starving hostage, getting beaten by people who already treat him like a monster. Li Susu, Bai Lu, travels back 500 years to stop him from destroying the world, but her method is incredibly twisted. She doesn't try to heal his trauma. She decides to make him fall in love with her so she can rip out his evil bone and kill him. The dark fantasy here is a time travel assassination, dressed up as a romance. Susu is literally flirting with a guy to set up his execution. The most heartbreaking part is that Tantai Jin only learns how to be human by experiencing the exact betrayal Susu inflicts on him. Turning a hero's rescue mission into a calculated trap makes this a story where the only way they connect is by completely destroying him from the inside out. Taking the most common romance trope in the world and turning it into a literal weapon is exactly why this sits at number 1. It stands out as the darkest, most brilliantly twisted manipulation in C-drama history, easily earning that top spot. And that is our top 15 dark fantasy and supernatural romance C-dramas you must watch. Please don't forget to subscribe and press that like button for more amazing content like this. See you in the next one.